Senator Dick Durbin posed a straightforward question to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. If the Pentagon already has $75 billion in unspent funding, why is Congress being asked to approve another $87.6 billion? But the discussion quickly became about much more than the numbers. Watch what unfolds after Durbin delivers his memorable loose change on the nightstand remark. Stay with us until the end for the crucial question that never received a clear answer. Watch now.
Senator Durbin.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Mr. Secretary, I'd like to ask you to help me reconcile some numbers. It's my understanding that this whole supplemental funding request is $87.6 billion, and most of the funding, $67 billion, is for the Department of Defense. Yet we are told the Department of Defense still has $75 billion in unobligated funding from last year's reconciliation package. Is that true?
Roughly correct numbers, yes.
So you left some change on the dresser before you prepared to come for this hearing. What's going to happen to that $75 billion?
Pay close attention to his response, because in the very next sentence, he avoids explaining where the money has already gone. Instead, he shifts the focus to how he intends to spend it in the future. If you want us covering these hearings step by step, be sure to like the video and subscribe. The difference is more important than it seems, and you're about to see exactly why. Keep watching.
Well, that 75 is, there's plans and designs on that, part of the rebuild of our military, which had to be undertaken. And so the One Big Beautiful Bill gave us specific avenues. I'd have to get you the exact numbers of what that is left to be allocated.
Does it have to do with the war in Iran?
No, this is rebuilding our military from what was not funded in the past under the Biden administration. So this is from 2026, One Big Beautiful Bill, which helped move the president's priorities like Golden Dome for America, move away from all the woke priorities of what the Biden administration was pursuing, give us a chance to start cutting these deals on munitions, all the things that the president wanted us to focus on: shipbuilding, hypersonics. I mean, the Biden administration ignored hypersonics. They just decided to pretend like that technology didn't exist and we shouldn't invest in it.
Durbin challenged the request for $87.6 billion, pointing out that the Pentagon is already holding $75 billion in unspent funds. Rather than directly addressing the question, Hegseth shifted the conversation to the Golden Dome project, hypersonic weapons, and criticism of the Biden administration. He was asked for a specific figure, but instead delivered a broader explanation of defense spending. Each time this committee presses for clear answers about where taxpayer dollars are actually going, the numbers seem to grow while the explanations become even less precise. If you want us analyzing these hearings line by line without the spin, be sure to like the video and subscribe. Durbin isn't finished yet, so keep watching as the Secretary attempts to run out the clock.
There are things. I don't know what Lloyd Austin did for 4 years. I really don't.
Well, sure
the amount of neglect, the amount of stale thinking
now.
and bureaucracy, it was staggering when we took over. So One Big Beautiful Bill gave us a chance to get caught back up.
Let me interrupt your speech for a minute, Mr. Secretary. It's my turn to ask questions. I've been listening patiently while you made your presentation. You estimated at one point that the cost of the war in Iran was $29 billion, but then added a caveat that there was a replacement of munitions, for example. Do you have a new estimate about what the war has cost us so far in the fifth month of the first year of this war in Iran?
Senator, the estimate we have as of today is $37.5 billion.
And is the current activity, which we've been told about, the exchange of fire back and forth in Iran, an indication that that number is going to go up in the months ahead?
Some of that number captures additional O&M, mill pay, and other that would be anticipated through the fiscal year. So some of that anticipates what costs would be going out in the future as well.
So the new number you've given me is what?
$37.5 billion.
Senator. And that represents the cost of the war through what period of time?
Through now for certain aspects of it, but also mill pay, O&M, other anticipated costs through September 30th, Senator.
General Kane, let me ask.
Did you notice the deflection that just took place? Senator Dick Durbin asked Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth a straightforward question that called for a single number. Instead of giving one, he launched into a broader explanation of the defense budget. Durbin didn't come into this hearing with broad accusations or vague talking points. He arrived with three specific figures: an $87.6 billion funding request, $75 billion in unspent funds, and $67 billion designated for the Department of Defense. These weren't random statistics. Together, they formed a clear and verifiable accounting question. Let's put those figures into perspective. In May, the amount stood at $29 billion. Today, it's $37.5 billion, an increase of $8.5 billion in just 3 months. That's roughly $94 million every day, or about 1,500 times the average annual income of an American household. Now consider the $75 billion that remains unspent. Scaled to the finances of a family earning $60,000 a year, it's comparable to having the equivalent of 1.25 million years of that household's income sitting unused. Then there's the new request, $67 billion for the Department of Defense alone. 3 numbers, 1 hearing. Yet the relationship between them was never fully explained on the official record. Pay close attention to Hegseth's phrase, roughly the right numbers. His initial reaction wasn't an immediate confirmation. There was a noticeable pause before he acknowledged the figures, as though he was deciding how to frame his response. The exchange followed a familiar pattern that can be broken into 3 steps. First, the existing funds are described as already committed to projects such as the Golden Dome Initiative and hypersonic weapons. Second, that explanation is reinforced by pointing to shortcomings of the previous administration. Third, the original question, where exactly the $75 billion currently sits, never receives a direct answer. This wasn't simply one person's interpretation. During the same hearing, Senator Coons raised a similar concern, emphasizing that the issues being discussed were not the same. More than one senator independently identified the same pattern. History shows this debate is far from new. During the Reagan administration, Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger faced questions from Congressional Budget Office Director Rudolph Penner over the pace of defense spending. In 2007, Defense Secretary Robert Gates defended supplemental funding requests during the Iraq surge. After the 2021 withdrawal from Afghanistan, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was also pressed about unspent operational funds. Different administrations, different conflicts, but the same recurring issue: transparency in Pentagon wartime spending. Durbin structured his questioning almost like an accounting exercise. He began with the total request of $87.6 billion, narrowed it to the $67 billion allocated to the Department of Defense, and then compared it with the $75 billion already sitting unspent. 3 figures all leading to one simple question: why request more money when so much remains unused? It's true that reconciliation funds and supplemental appropriations follow different legal processes. The $75 billion may already be committed to specific programs and therefore not legally available for immediate wartime expenses. But that important distinction was never clearly explained during the hearing. What stands out most about Hegseth's response isn't what he said, it's what he left unsaid. He stated that the $75 billion was intended for plans and designs that still needed to be completed. That doesn't mean the money had been spent. It only indicates that it had been allocated, and those are 2 very different claims. Durbin's approach reflects a common hearing strategy known as cut and redirect. Allow the witness to speak long enough to sound comprehensive, then step in and steer the discussion back to the original question. The response followed another familiar tactic: scope expansion, answering a narrowly focused financial question with a much broader discussion of national defense strategy. Congressional hearings are governed by strict time limits. Each senator controls their allotted time, can interrupt a witness, and can reclaim the floor whenever necessary. Those rules exist because experienced witnesses often use lengthy explanations to consume time without directly addressing the question being asked. There are at least 2 ways to interpret this exchange. One view is that these numbers reflect the rapidly changing financial demands of an ongoing conflict. The other is that they expose a long-standing problem with tracking and explaining large-scale military spending. Hegseth also stated that 95% of the $75 billion would be allocated by the end of September. However, no supporting documentation, detailed breakdown, or timeline identifying those specific line items was presented during the hearing. Another technical point is easy to overlook. reconciliation funds, and supplemental appropriations are governed under different legal authorities. That distinction may account for part of Hegseth's explanation, but it was never clearly presented to the committee. In the middle of a debate over $87.6 billion, the room briefly laughed at a remark comparing the issue to loose change on a nightstand. One of the largest funding discussions of the hearing was momentarily reduced to one of its most casual lines. The larger questions remain unresolved. How should the true cost of this conflict be measured, and can the public have confidence in the officials responsible for managing these enormous budgets? Now we'd like to hear your perspective. With $75 billion already sitting unspent, do you believe an additional defense budget of this size is justified? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want us to continue examining these official hearings and breaking down the facts, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel.